I've made up my mind, I'll marry that vegetable in the Xie family. Lena was already at the doorframe of the Ruan family's old house, a mocking arc curling up at the corner of her red lips. Richard nearly dropped the cigar in his hand onto the priceless Persian carpet. He suddenly sat up straight from the leather chair, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes smoothing out. Lena, you've thought it through, that's great, the Xie family is pressing us. You have to marry into the southern city within half a month. What style of wedding dress do you like? Dad will have someone make it for you. Lena sneered, just like that, I'm marrying that person in place of your beloved illegitimate daughter, and you're not going to offer anything. The temperature in the living room plummeted, the soft woman's face darkened. How can you talk like that? What illegitimate daughter? She's your sister, only with a different mother, she chuckled. Ice forming in her eyes, she's the product of your affair. I'll never acknowledge her. Richard's temple throbbed with veins, but he forcibly suppressed his anger before it could erupt. He took a deep breath, the cigar ash falling rustlingly. What do you want? 10 billion. She parted her red lips slightly. Also, after I get married, get rid of Evan, and go protect your precious illegitimate daughter. Richard's expression froze. He stared at his daughter as if she were crazy. Are you insane? 10 billion is going to drain all my liquid assets. And Evan, isn't he your favorite bodyguard? You used to always make a fuss about marrying him. This time you're getting married and not taking him with you. Just tell me if you agree or not. Lena became impatient and turned to leave. Richard slammed the table and stood up. The day you go to Southern City to get married, I'll take care of these two things immediately. He had no mind to investigate further. He just wanted to settle this matter quickly. Back then, the Xie family's only son was incredibly popular. She took the initiative to arrange a marriage between the two families, planning to marry Vivian into the family in the future, which would also be a good home for this youngest daughter, who knew that an accident would leave the Xie family's only son in a vegetative state. Unwilling to let Vivian suffer, she then remembered that Lena was also her daughter, with her back to her. She waved her hand. The sound of her high heels on the marble floor was as crisp as a slap in the face. Just as she grasped the doorknob, a soft, supporting voice came from behind again. I can understand you wanting money, but don't you like Evan the most? How can you bear to give her to? Lena's fingers froze. He didn't turn his head, but his eyes suddenly burned. That name was like a thorn, piercing deeply into the softest part of his heart. He pushed the doorknob open with force, shutting the soft woman and that question behind him. It was already late at night when she returned to the villa. Lena went upstairs in her high heels, and as she passed Evan's room, she heard suppressed sounds coming from inside. The door wasn't closed tightly. She looked up and saw the scene inside with perfect clarity. Evan was leaning against the headboard, a photo between his slender fingers. His eyes were closed, his Adam's apple bobbed, and a low, sensual voice escaped his lips. Baby Vivian. So good. It was a photo of Vivian, taken at her birthday party last year. She was wearing a white dress, smiling purely and innocently. Lena's fingernails dug deep crescents into the strap of her Hermes bag, finally answering Richard's question in her heart, because he, like you, only loves Vivian. This answer churned in her heart, and all her internal organs ached. 3 years ago, when he first met Evan, it was on the day he was choosing a bodyguard. Among the tall and sturdy bodyguards, he spotted him at a glance. The reason was simple. He was ridiculously handsome, a height of 188, broad shoulders and a narrow waist, sharp features, especially those dark eyes, cold as if quenched in ice. Lena was a well-known little enchantress in the circle, who originally wanted to play around with him. But after 3 years, when she deliberately got drunk and collapsed into his arms, he lifted her by the scruff of her neck with one hand. Like picking up a cat, and put her back on the sofa. She wore a suspender nightgown and knocked on his door in the middle of the night, and he directly wrapped her whole body in a suit jacket and respectfully sent her back to her room. He even deliberately pretended to drown in the pool, and he jumped down to save her, but didn't even touch her waist. No matter how he flirted, he didn't get close to women, always gripping his hand and calling him young lady, but he fell in love anyway. And he didn't know how his heart was moved. Perhaps it was because he had been too lonely since his mother's death. When she was 7 years old, Richard cheated and brought back an illegitimate daughter named Vivian, who was only 3 months younger than her. It turned out that in their 10 years of marriage, he had been cheating for 9 of them. That day, the family she thought was happy and peaceful was completely shattered. At that time, Mrs. Won was 9 months pregnant with her second child, due in just a few days, and Mrs. Won loved him so much. Richard hysterically questioned her. Richard cried so hard that he almost passed out, and that night she went into premature labor because of it. After being sent to the hospital, she didn't even make it to the operating room before she and the baby died. From then on, Lena loathed Richard and loathed Vivian too. He moved out of the Rouen residence, went to school alone, ate alone, and grew up alone. It wasn't until he grew up to be so beautiful that there were too many playboy sons of rich families harassing him in the circle that he had the idea of finding a bodyguard. Evan was his first bodyguard. Since then, he's never been alone. Evan accompanies him in everything he does. He went from appreciating and flirting with him to falling in love. But for 3 years, over 1,000 days and nights, Evan never even batted an eyelash for him. He thought Evan was just naturally aloof, until one day he stumbled upon him masturbating to a photo of Vivian. Then he watched Evan, after finishing, take a phone call. "Evan, how long are you going to play this bodyguard game? You're the crown prince of Bei Cheng. What woman can't you have? You fell in love with Vivian at first sight. Why not just take her by force? Why are you being so innocent, running off to be her sister's bodyguard just to see her all the time?" Evan said coldly. "I've investigated. Weiwei is an illegitimate child, had a hard life growing up, and lacks a sense of security. Pursuing her rashly would scare her. I want to take things slow. How did the Wen family produce such a lovesick fool like you? I thought that soft, young lady was flirting with you every day. I thought you would be moved. Let me tell you, she is a well-known enchantress in the circle. People who like her can line up from here to France." Evan seemed to smile slightly, but the words he spoke plunged him into an icy cellar. Really, not interested. He wasn't even worth a single strand of Weiwei's hair. Every word was like a knife stabbing Lena's heart. At that moment, he didn't even like Evan anymore. Inside, it was unknown how long it lasted, but for some reason, today's Evan was not released for a long time. Seeing this, he coldly hooked his lips and suddenly pushed the door open. The moment Evan looked up, Lena saw an unfathomable darkness in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he was a superior being caught in such a situation. But his expression did not waver in the slightest. He calmly stuffed the photo under the pillow, and his slender fingers slowly and methodically adjusted the zipper. In just a few seconds, he returned to that abstinent and detached appearance, as if the out-of-control man from just now was just an illusion. %% Lena couldn't help but sneer slightly. "If you didn't finish venting, put it back. Aren't you afraid of holding it in? Do you want me to help you?" %. Evan's expression did not change, but he leaned back slightly, distancing himself from him. "Does Miss have something for me?" He's always like this, getting aroused by just looking at Vivian's photo, but when facing him, he's like a monk with no desires. Lena's nails dug into her palm as she thought of Vivian's plain face. Clearly, she doesn't have his figure, nor his looks, yet everyone falls for that act of innocence. It doesn't matter. She, Lena, has looks, money, and a great body. From today on, he won't want anyone who doesn't like him. "There's an auction tomorrow. You're coming with me." He coldly finished his instructions and turned to leave. Evan frowned. "I thought I took 2 days off. I heard Vivian would be there too." He didn't turn his head as a moment of silence fell behind him, followed by the man's deep reply, "Understood, miss." Lena felt a prick in her heart. Sure enough, as long as Vivian was mentioned, he would break any principle. Rest assured, she would soon personally deliver him to Vivian's side. The next morning, as Lena stepped out of the villa, she saw Evan already standing by the car waiting. A black suit outlined his perfect figure with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, and the morning light gilded his stern profile with a golden edge. In the past, at times like this, she would always tease him on purpose, or pretend to sprain her ankle and fall into his arms, or deliberately breathe softly in his ear. But today, he just handed over the car expressionlessly, without even giving her a second glance. Evan seemed a little surprised and glanced at her. but quickly looked away and silently got into the passenger seat. The car drove towards the auction venue. Along the way, Lena looked out the window, not trying to strike up a conversation with him using various excuses as she usually did. The car was so quiet you could hear each other breathing. The auction venue was located in the city center's top hotel, where crystal chandeliers lit the hall like daylight. And the air was filled with the sense of perfume and the gleam of hair ornaments amidst the celebrities and dignitaries. Lena saw Vivian standing in front as soon as she entered the venue. She was wearing a white dress, her long, straight black hair cascading over her shoulders, laughing and chatting with several socialites. Looking innocent and harmless, Evan's eyes immediately changed, although he was still standing behind Lena, fulfilling his bodyguard duties. Lena could feel that his attention had been completely captured. Vivian saw them and immediately trotted over, affectionately taking Lena's arm. "What a coincidence. You're here for the auction too." Lena coldly pulled her hand back. "Don't touch me." Vivian's eyes immediately turned red, and she looked at Evan with aggrieved eyes. "Brother Yensi, I just wanted to be closer to my sister." Evan frowned slightly, his eyes filled with suppressed disgust as he looked at Lena. Vivian took the opportunity to tug on Evan's sleeve. "Brother Yangsi, I heard that last time I had a fever and wanted to eat red bean cake, you braved the heavy rain in the middle of the night to buy it and send it to the Ruan family. It's just a pity that I had a bad fever last time. And I've been recuperating these days, so I haven't thanked you yet." Evan's stern eyebrows softened instantly. "You're too polite, miss. It was just on the way." "Just on the way," Lena sneered. "She disappeared for 5 hours that day and came back soaking wet. That's his on the way. Then I must treat you to a meal," Vivian said sweetly. Evan didn't refuse this time, but left it to the second young lady's arrangement. "Then let's invite my sister along at that time." Vivian looked at Ruan Muley and suddenly exclaimed in surprise, Sister, why do you look so haggard? I'm the one who's supposed to be sick." Lena coldly interrupted. "Am I familiar with you, daughter of a mistress?" "Mind your own business." Vivian's expression changed drastically, and Evan's brow furrowed even deeper. Just then, the auctioneer announced the start of the auction, finally interrupting the awkward conversation. Lena was too lazy to pay any more attention to him and sat down directly. He was about to marry into the Xie family. It was certainly unrealistic to expect the soft rice husband to prepare a dowry for her, so he had to prepare these things himself. This was also his real purpose in attending this auction. After taking their seats, the first item was brought up, a pigeon blood ruby necklace with a starting price of 1 million. He raised his paddle without hesitation to 2 million. To his surprise, Vivian also raised her paddle, bidding 3 million. Lena looked at Vivian, who smiled at her. "Sister, I like this piece too. You don't mind letting me have it, do you? After all, Dad seems to give me more pocket money than he gives you." Lena sneered. "It's more than just not as much as hers." From childhood, Ruan Fu gave Vivian 5 million in pocket money each month, while he only had 500 yuan. If it weren't for the inheritance left by his mother, he might have starved to death long ago, but now it's different. He has 10 billion and 4 million. Lena raised her paddle again, and Vivian was clearly stunned, but still gritted her teeth and raised the price. 4, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, after several rounds of bidding. Vivian's face became more and more unsightly. "Sister, where did you get so much money? Aren't you afraid you can't afford it?" Lena doubled the price directly to 10 million, then she looked at her with a sarcastic smile. "Why do I feel like you're the one who can't afford it now?" Vivian's face turned pale, and the surrounding guests began to whisper. The auctioneer politely asked, "Vivian, do you want to raise the price?" "Just a moment." Vivian hurriedly took out her phone to send a message to Madame Ruan. After a moment, her face turned even more ugly, obviously rejected. Seeing this, Lena curled her lips. He would refuse, clearly. He's given 10 billion to him. How would he have money left to save face for his precious daughter? Just at this awkward moment, a man in a suit suddenly appeared in the center of the venue and announced that he would be outbidding everyone. The whole place was in an uproar. "This gentleman, are you saying?" the auctioneer asked in surprise. The man explained, "I am Evan's assistant." Evan instructed that anything Vivian takes a fancy to at today's auction should be outbid by us. The auction hall erupted the moment the gavel fell, the only heir of the Wen-Shangwen family. The well-known crown prince of North City, wasn't he known for being uninterested in women? How could he light a sky lantern for Vivian? It seems Vivian is about to rise in the world. The surrounding discussions rose and fell. Vivian's face was first filled with shock, then turned to joy, and finally became an undisguised smugness. "Excuse me, where is Evan? Can I thank him in person?" Vivian asked, her face flushed. The assistant replied respectfully, "Evan is not available to meet right now. When the time comes, he will naturally meet with you." Percent only then did Vivian turn to Lena, her eyes full of triumphant joy. "Sister, are you still bidding?" In the next second, she pretended to be innocent and added, "Oh, I almost forgot that Evan helped me light the sky lanterns. If you continue to bid, won't he be bankrupted? After all, who in this industry is richer than Evan?" Percent Lena's face changed drastically, and she suddenly looked at Evan, only to see him looking at Vivian with adoration, his eyes full of tenderness. The following auctions were like a typical idol drama. As long as Vivian glanced at an item, the assistant would immediately raise the price. The ruby necklace, the Northern Song Dynasty Ru-wear tea set, and even the Monet water lilies with a starting price of 80 million were all added to Vivian's collection. Lena suddenly stood up, unable to hold back her questioning of the assistant. "Are you Evan not leaving any items for anyone else?" The assistant carefully glanced at Evan, who nodded almost imperceptibly as an apology. The assistant of the rich and spoiled young lady coldly replied, "These are all gifts from Evan to the second young lady. He only hopes that the second young lady enjoys this auction. As for the feelings of others, they are not within his consideration." Lena laughed, her fingernails digging deeply into her palm. She looked at Evan, whose gaze remained fixed on the triumphant Vivian. "Evan, well done. You've really done well." The auction ended, and Vivian was surrounded by a group of socialites and wealthy women, all fawning over her. Lena couldn't stand the sight of this hypocritical scene and quickly left the venue. As soon as she got into the car, she told the driver to go to the Nightfall Club. She needed alcohol to numb herself. Before the car door could close, Vivian squeezed in, saying, "Sister, are you going to the club? I've been feeling bored lately. Can I come with you?" Lena was about to kick her out of the car, but Evan subtly closed the door and told the driver to drive, all the way. Vivian was excitedly talking about today's auction. "Brother Yancy, why do you think Evan is so nice to me? I've clearly never met him before." Evan's voice is incredibly gentle. "Because he likes you." Vivian's eyes widened instantly, her cheeks flushed. "Brother Yancy, don't joke around. Men understand men the best." As he said this, he looked at Vivian with a burning gaze. "Where there's money, there's love. Moreover, miss, you are so wonderful, it's not surprising if he likes you." "So does Brother Yancy also like me?" Vivian asked suddenly. Evan was taken aback and was about to speak when Lena interrupted coldly, "If you want to flirt, get out. This is my car." Vivian's eyes immediately turned red. "I'm sorry, did I disturb you?" "Sister, I won't talk anymore." Lena was too lazy to pay him any attention. Turning her head to look out the window, through the reflection in the car window, she clearly saw Evan looking at Vivian with eyes full of heartache and tenderness. While his gaze towards her was cold and disgusted, she smiled self-deprecatingly. It seemed all men only liked green tea types. The club lights were dim, and Lena tilted her head back to gulp down her third glass of whiskey. The alcohol burned her throat, but couldn't extinguish the frustration in her heart. In the center of the dance floor, she danced wildly in her stilettos. Amidst the swirling red dress, she caught a glimpse of Evan standing by the booth. He was supposed to be her bodyguard, but now he was guarding Vivian, not leaving her side. Vivian said something, and her lips almost brushed Evan's ear when she leaned in close. The man who was always as cold as ice to her, his ear tips actually turned a faint red. Lena sneered and turned around, only to be surrounded by a group of young masters. "Miss, would you do us the honor of having a drink with us? Can I add you on WeChat? I've wanted to meet Lena for so long." This face of hers was truly more captivating in person than in photos. She was cornered and unable to move, unable to refuse, and more men surrounded her, some even touching her waist. When, Yentzi, she finally couldn't bear it anymore, the man seemed to notice her predicament, frowned and pushed through the crowd. His arms wrapped in a black suit with distinct muscle lines, and just one look made the group of playboys retreat. "One would think you were his bodyguard," Lena sneered. Raising her hand to wipe the wine stains from her collarbone, Evan lowered his eyes, apologizing. I didn't see just now." She suddenly leaned closer, her red lips almost brushing his chin, or simply not wanting to see. The girl's breath suddenly approached Evan, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he took a half step back. "Mrs. Drunk, don't worry, once I marry, you can protect Vivian enough." Lena's voice was completely drowned out by a sudden scream from the stage. Staff pushed up an iron cage with 2 adult Tibetan mastiffs pacing anxiously inside. Tonight's special program host shouted excitedly, "Black Whirlwind vs. Red Flame betting channel is open." Lena frowned. The Night Color Club often has this kind of bloody fighting and betting performance. But he always loathed it. Just as he was about to leave, the iron cage suddenly made an overwhelmed creaking sound, and the lock came loose. The change happened in an instant. The larger Tibetan Mastiff broke open the cage door and rushed towards the nearest crowd. Amidst the screams, Lena saw Evan turn around without hesitation, almost instinctively rushing to Vivian's side, holding him in his arms and pushing him towards the safety passage. And he himself was standing closest to the Tibetan Mastiff. Even able to see the saliva hanging on the beast's fangs, the excruciating pain came unexpectedly. When the Tibetan Mastiff's sharp teeth pierced the muscles of his calf, Lena seemed to hear the sound of fabric and flesh tearing together. A piece of flesh was torn off, and blood gushed out. He fell to the ground. Watching the beast pounce again. Bang! The gunshot hurt his eardrums, and the Tibetan Mastiff fell to the ground. The last thing he saw was Evan holding a gun to protect Vivian's back and the swirling, darkening ceiling, and the smell of disinfectant. When Lena regained consciousness amidst the excruciating pain, the first thing she saw was the snow-white ceiling. Her calf felt like it had been branded with a hot iron. Each breath tugging at the wound, she turned her head with difficulty, and the scene at the hospital room door struck her not yet fully awake brain with another heavy blow. Percent Vivian was buried in Evan's arms, sobbing, "Brother Yenzi, you're my sister's bodyguard. How did you end up protecting me? It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come." The man's well-defined fingers gently patted her back, his voice unbelievably tender. "Second miss, don't blame yourself. Even if we did it over 100 times, he paused, his fingertips wiping away the tears on the girl's face, "I would still choose to protect you first." "Why?" Vivian raised her tearful eyes. Evan gazed at her, his deep brows and eyes tinged with affection. "Because the sound of me washing his cup and smashing it on the ground interrupted Evan." Before he could finish speaking, Vivian leaped away from Evan's embrace like a startled rabbit. "Sister, you're awake." He rushed to the bedside, tears welling up instantly. "How do you feel? Does it still hurt?" "It's all my fault." Lena's pale lips curled into a cold smile. "How can I get better when you're here blocking my view?" Vivian's tears instantly fell even more intensely, her shoulders trembling slightly, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Biting his lip, he gave Evan one last look, then turned and ran out. Evan subconsciously raised his foot to chase after him, but stopped abruptly. He turned to look at Lena, his voice low. "Miss, the situation was urgent. I didn't react in time." Lena didn't speak, but turned her head away, her gaze fixed on the window outside. She didn't want to listen. For 3 whole days, Evan stood guard outside the hospital room like a dutiful bodyguard, but he never spoke a word to her again. On the day of her discharge, Lena, with her leg still not fully healed, went straight to the study. She opened the mahogany drawer and took out a shiny black leather whip, a family heirloom of the Ruan family, known for splitting skin with a single strike. "Bring Evan here," she said to the housekeeper, when Evan pushed open the door. Lena was slowly and deliberately wiping the whip, sunlight casting a shadow under her eyelashes through the French windows. "Evan, you are my bodyguard, and I was in danger. I am punishing you." Do you have any objections? She looked up at him. Evan stood there, his pupils imperceptibly contracting. Lena saw it clearly. This young master of North City probably never imagined that one day someone would dare to use family law on him. Yes, he is the famous only son of the Wen family, usually. So many people are eager to please him, who would dare to touch him with a finger, but now she was actually going to whip him. Lena stared at his expression and suddenly smiled. He was actually hesitating. He could clearly turn around and leave, he could resign, but he was actually hesitating, just for Vivian. To be able to continue to stay by her side, to continue to get close to Vivian. Her eyes were burning, and she almost laughed with tears. Evan gritted his teeth and finally said in a low voice, "No." At that moment, Lena's heart twitched fiercely. He clenched the whip, and suddenly raised his hand. "Don't." A slender figure suddenly rushed over, blocking Evan tightly. Vivian's eyes were filled with tears, and her voice trembled. "Sister, if you want to hit someone, hit me. It has nothing to do with Brother Yenzi. Get out of the way," Lena said coldly. "I won't." Wan Jianwei shook her head, crying with pear blossoms and rain. "I was the one who hurt you. If you want to punish someone, punish me." Evan reached out to pull him away. "Second, miss. This is none of your business." But Vivian stubbornly stood in front of him, refusing to move. Lena watched this scene, her anger surging, and suddenly lashed out with her whip. The cracking sound of the whip was sharp and piercing, and she was originally aiming for Evan, but Vivian actually rushed forward and took the blow for him. Vivian cried out in pain. Her slender body swayed, and she collapsed to the ground. Evan caught him and looked down to check his injuries. When he looked up, Lena met a pair of extremely cold eyes, filled with murderous intent, as if he would pounce on her and snap her neck in the next second. He shuddered all over, as if falling into an ice cave. "Get out," he heard his own trembling voice. Evan picked up the unconscious Vivian and turned to leave. The study door slammed shut behind him with a deafening crash. Lena stood there, finding her hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold the whip. 3 days later, Wan Wuli went to try on wedding dresses alone. The night was dark, and just as she came out of the store, someone suddenly covered her mouth and nose from behind. The pungent smell of medicine flooded into her nostrils, and she struggled a couple of times before quickly losing consciousness. When she woke up again, everything was black, her eyes were covered, and her hands were tied to a chair, making her unable to move. When the first whip struck, Wan Wuli arched her back in pain, the rough hemp rope digging deeply into her wrists, and the blindfold made the darkness even thicker. She bit her lip to swallow the scream. "You've offended someone you shouldn't have." The executor's voice seemed to come from a very far away place. The lashes fell like raindrops, each carrying a fierce cracking sound, tearing his skin open. He bit his lip hard, not letting himself scream. Who would do this to him? The flogging lasted a long time, finally stopping when he lost consciousness. Then, the sound of a phone call came through. "Young master, I've done what you ordered," the man said respectfully. A familiar male voice came from the other end of the phone. Send him back, only one sentence." But Lena's blood instantly froze. It was Ivan who ordered the beating. Just because he accidentally slapped Vivian's, he made someone return 99 lashes. Intense pain and cold swept through his body, and he finally couldn't hold on, completely passing out. At the hospital, Lena lay on the hospital bed, the wounds on his back burning with pain. Outside the door, the nurses whispered, "That man is so handsome, and so gentle with his girlfriend. Yeah, he's making such a fuss over a small injury. Then look at 304, he's covered in injuries and no one comes to see him." Lena pulled out the 4-needle, and supporting himself against the wall, moved step by step towards the corridor. Sure enough, at the door of the VIP ward, he saw Evan. He was holding a glass of water, carefully feeding Vivian a drink. Vivian pouted and whined something. Evan used his thumb to wipe the water stains from the corner of her mouth, his eyes so tender that they could drip water. Lena slowly leaned against the wall. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't understand why his heart could still hurt so much even though he had already decided to let go, as if someone was slowly slicing his flesh with a blunt knife. "Don't cry, Lena," he told himself, "because no one will care." On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Ruan Woolley had just arrived home when she heard familiar footsteps behind her. Evan was back. The two looked at each other and saw something different in each other's eyes. They were speechless like that, until Lena's phone suddenly vibrated, and Won Fu's name popped up. Tomorrow is Weiwei's birthday party. Won Fu's voice was firm, brooking no refusal. He's been crying in front of me lately, saying he wants to improve his relationship with you. Come and join us. %%, Lena scoffed. Don't go and get upset. This might be the last time, Richard emphasized. The Xie family has already set the date for when you marry into their family. She hung up the phone directly and looked up to see Evan, as if standing in the shadows. Do you think I should go? The man's sharply defined profile appeared exceptionally calm under the wall lamp. He was silent for a few seconds, then said in a low voice, "Going, fine." He tugged at the corner of his mouth. Then so be it. The birthday banquet was set in the glass conservatory of the Ruan family's old house. Lena, wearing a dark green velvet dress, arrived to find that most of the guests had already arrived. Under the crystal chandelier, Vivian, in a pink tutu, was the center of attention like a true princess. Her sister Vivian greeted her with surprise. Wanting to help, he sidestepped her outstretched arm and scanned the room. Gifts from Richard. A limited edition Hermes, Tiffany's, Blue River, and a Porsche car key. Weiwei has been sensible since she was little. I stood beside Vivian with a gentle and loving expression. Just like many years ago, he stood beside himself and his mother. She was wearing a white dress, held high by her father, while her mother smiled gently beside them. Now, everything has changed. After cutting the cake, the guests dispersed in small groups. Vivian's best friend pulled her aside to gossip quietly. Weiwei. So many wealthy young men from the industry came today. Is President Ruan trying to set you up on a blind date? But I heard you were already engaged to the Xie family. Vivian smiled, glancing meaningfully at Ruan Wu not far away. That engagement is off. That's good, that's good. I heard that one's become a vegetable. Wouldn't marrying him be like being a widow while he's still alive? Her best friend winked suggestively. Weiwei, there are so many men here today. Tell us what your criteria are for choosing a husband. Amidst the teasing of the crowd, Vivian blushed and ticked off her fingers. First, he has to love me very much. The kind who can smell my name in his heart. Second, he has to have courage. I heard there's a rare, 100-year-old thorn rose on Wangyu Cliff, and he has to pick it for me. Third, before the words had faded, the banquet hall doors were suddenly pushed open. Evan came to deliver gifts, wishing Miss Ruan a happy birthday, joy, and carefree life. An assistant led a group of people in, carrying priceless gifts one after another, a Western-style pink diamond necklace, antique paintings, and even the deed to a private island, causing an uproar throughout the venue. This was sent by Evan. I heard that Evan sent someone to bid an exorbitant price for Vivian at the previous auction. Now he has come to give gifts in person. It seems that Miss Ruan is about to rise to prominence. Whispers arose one after another, and many people glanced at Lena with pity. Clearly, she was more beautiful and had a more orthodox background, but now everyone felt that she had lost. Lena put down her wine glass and turned to walk towards the terrace. The night breeze was slightly cool. Just as she took a deep breath, Vivian's voice came from behind. Sister, why are you here alone, without guests, without her father? Vivian finally dropped her pretense. Do you know, Dad told me. You're going to marry that vegetable. She smiled sweetly and maliciously. How pitiful. Back then, your mother couldn't win against my mother, and now you can't win against me either. Lena turned around abruptly. Say that again. Vivian leaned in close, her red lips spitting out venomous words. Your mother deserved to die in childbirth, a crisp slap echoed, but it wasn't Lena who struck, but Vivian who slapped herself. The next second, tears welled up, and she staggered back a few steps, falling right into the arms of Evan, who had rushed over. Don't blame my sister, Vivian sobbed, covering her face. I angered her. The next moment, Richard and the guests also arrived. Drawn by the noise, condemning gazes shot at Lena like arrows. How dare you? Richard roared. Do you have any manners? The guests' whispers were like knives stabbing at her. It's Vivian's birthday today. After all, it's because her mother died early, born but not raised properly. that she's so narrow-minded. Lena watched this carefully orchestrated drama and suddenly laughed. He strode forward and, in full view of everyone, slapped Vivian hard across the face. See clearly. He smashed a champagne glass, the shards reflecting countless astonished faces. This is how I hit. As he turned to leave, he saw Evan holding Vivian's shoulder, his eyes as cold as if they were glazed with ice. Lena, having just reached the corner of the garden path, felt her wrist seized roughly. Evan's grip was astonishingly strong. She felt as if her bones were about to be crushed. "Young miss," he said, his voice low and filled with suppressed anger, "what is it?" He raised his eyes mockingly. "I slapped him. Do you want to return 99 slaps?" Evan's pupils contracted slightly. What does he mean? Could it be that he knows about what happened last time? Impossible. He kept it secret. "Miss," he loosened his grip slightly, frowning, "you have everything. Why do you still bully the second miss?" "I have everything." Lena suddenly laughed, the sound hoarse and tearful. "What do I have? As soon as he came, he made my mother have a difficult labor and die. 2 lives lost. He moved in and took my room, my toys, my pocket money, my dad, and even my study abroad opportunity, everything I had." This was the first time Evan had heard him say so much. In the moonlight, Lena, her eyes, usually filled with sarcasm, were brimming with tears, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. I heard Evan's voice was cold and harsh. "The second young lady was the one having a hard time." Lena suddenly shook her off, turned around, and was about to leave you. Believe it or not, she turned and got into the car, before Evan spoke again. "Eldest young lady, I would like to ask for a few days off, as you wish." He closed the car door without looking back. After the black car drove a distance, he suddenly said to the driver, "Turn around and go back near the Ron's house." Sure enough, he saw Evan get out of a Rolls-Royce. Lena told the driver to follow from a distance until it finally stopped outside a high-end tattoo parlor. Through the glass window, he saw Evan unbutton his shirt, revealing his strong chest. The tattoo artist asked something, and he only said 2 words towards his heart. From the shape of his mouth, it was clearly Wei Wei. The assistant was dissuading him, saying that Master Wen Shao would be angry. He only said 1 word. The electric needle buzzed, and every needle felt like it was piercing a bloody hole in Lena's heart. 2 hours later, Evan walked out clutching his bleeding chest, his face pale, but he insisted on getting in the car to go to Wangyu Cliff. He said to the driver, "No, that place is too dangerous. You just got your tattoo, and now you're going," softly and weakly sitting in the car. He suddenly remembered Vivian's criteria for choosing a mate, one who would tattoo my name over their heart. "There's a flower on Wangyu Cliff. He must pick it for me." He smiled, and tears fell down. "Let's go," he said to the driver. "Don't follow me." That night, he saw a photo on Vivian's WeChat moments. A bramble rose blooming on a cliff, with the caption, "Someone traveled over mountains and rivers just to pick a flower for me." At 3 in the morning, Evan came back, covered in blood, his right hand fractured, but the corners of his lips were slightly raised, with a hint of a smile. The next day, just as Lena was about to leave, Evan came out of his room. He looked pale. His right arm was wrapped in a bandage, and his shirt collar was slightly open. "Miss, I had a bit of a car accident last night, and I need to rest for a few more days. I can't protect you for the time being." It was clearly a fall from climbing a cliff, but she didn't expose his lie. Just gave a faint hum and went straight out. Today is the day she says goodbye to her best friends, in a VIP room at a high-end club. "Come on, let's not go home until we're drunk tonight." Her best friend, Lin Ran, put her arm around Ron Wu's shoulder. "Our Miss Ron is getting married soon, and will be Mrs. Xie soon. We must celebrate properly." The room was full of people who were her closest friends over the years. The champagne tower sparkled in the light. The music was deafening. But Lena felt particularly quiet. "If you ask me, a vegetative husband is great." Lin Ran swayed her glass drunkenly. "Rich, handsome, and you don't have to take care of him. It's the ideal marriage." Another friend chimed in. "And the Xie family has such a large industry. It will all be yours." Wan Wu. Li Qing smiled lightly. "Once you're married, you have to be more well-behaved. You have to save some face for the Xie family." Everyone was stunned. and then they changed their tune. Chattering, young Master Xie will definitely wake up. You're so beautiful, how could he bear to sleep forever? Our Lena is the #1 beauty in the circle, how could she be a widow? Lena listened to their nonsense with a smile, drinking one cup after another. When saying goodbye, Lin Ran suddenly hugged her. Her voice choked. Your dad is really a scumbag, and that Vivian. Do you want us to help you teach her a lesson? No need, Lena patted her back. Once I'm gone. None of this will have anything to do with me. He hugged everyone one by one until their eyes were red. After settling the bill and coming out, Wan Wooly heard a familiar voice when passing by the next room. Is that flower really that hard to pick? You bet. Even professional mountaineering teams don't dare to go to Wang Yueya easily. Wan Wooly saw through the half-closed door that Vivian was playing with the thorny rose. Her best friend gossiped, so she risked her life to pick it. When he sent the flowers over yesterday, I seemed to see him exhausted. He kept mentioning your name. It looks like he's really planning to pursue you. Just a bodyguard. Does he deserve me? I'm someone who has been favored by the Wen family's young master. She stroked the rose's tattered petals. But Brother Yanzi is indeed good-looking. It wouldn't hurt to have him as a lover occasionally. The best friend widened her eyes. Aren't you afraid he'll hear you? So what if he hears me? Vivian didn't care. Men, give them a little sweetness and they'll be devoted. Wan Wooly stood in the shadows of the corner, suddenly wanting to know what Evan's expression would be if he heard these words. That high and mighty Evan, what would his reaction be if he knew he was being treated as a backup? Evan, is this the person you risked your life to love? He smiled sarcastically, turned and left without disturbing the people inside. After leaving the club, he went directly to the cemetery. Lena knelt in front of her mother's grave, gently wiping the dust off the photo. Mom, I'm getting married, to that vegetable from the Xie family. It's good, at least he won't cheat. The wind blew through the white chrysanthemums in front of the tombstone, like a silent response. Don't worry, I won't be like you. Her fingertip traced the cold stone tablet. To love someone so much that you don't even want your life, that's too stupid. I will live this life well, very, very well. As dusk approached, Wan Wooly stood up and took one last look at her mother's photo before turning to leave. After returning home, Lena spent the entire night packing her luggage, clothes, jewelry, and photo albums, meticulously organizing each item as if preparing never to return. As dawn broke, her phone vibrated, indicating that 10,000,000,000 yuan had been deposited into her account. Immediately afterward, Richard's phone call came in, urging her to leave today as the Xie family was pressing hard, and confirming that the 10 billion had been transferred. As for Evan, he would be sent to the Rouen residence. Lena interrupted him, declaring that from today onwards, Evan would be Vivian's bodyguard and that she no longer wanted him. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone before Richard suddenly softened his tone, claiming that her biological father had always loved her and her mother, and had only previously thought of her as morally corrupt. Lena laughed, realizing how truly disgusting he was. She hung up the phone and immediately blacklisted the number. The moving company's truck had already arrived outside, as Lena directed the workers to move the luggage. Evan happened to come out of the room. Miss, what is this? He frowned, looking at the boxes all over the floor. Moving. Lena didn't even look up. Moving to another place. Evan nodded, seemingly without giving it much thought, and certainly not realizing that the moving he spoke of was from North City to South City. I'll help you. She finally looked at him. Don't bother. Do you have other tasks? Go buy some sugar-roasted chestnuts and deliver them to the Rouen family for Vivian. Evan is clearly the main attraction. You'll understand why once you go. He saw his Adam's apple move, and a flicker passed through those usually indifferent eyes, but ultimately, the desire to see Vivian won out over his doubts. What did Evan remember again? Miss, send me your new address after you move. I'll come over later to sort things out. 24 hours a day. A bodyguard had to live and eat with him to ensure his safety at all times. This was the contract they signed back then. But this time, Lena didn't answer him. After waiting for a while, seeing that he really didn't intend to acknowledge her, she had no choice but to think that maybe he would send it later, and she turned and left. When she reached the gate, she vaguely heard him say something. She turned back, and Lena stood in the morning light, and said softly, "It's nothing, let's go." After his figure completely disappeared, Lena got into the car and said to the driver, "To the airport." The scenery outside the car window receded rapidly. He took out his phone, removed the SIM card, and with a gentle snap, the card broke in two and was casually thrown out the window, then completely disappeared. Evan stood in front of the carved iron gate of the Ruan family's old house, a bag of freshly roasted chestnuts in his hand. The paper bag was slightly softened by the heat, and a sweet, cloying aroma lingered around his nose. He raised his hand and pressed his heart. Where the name Vivian was tattooed, the needle marks unhealed and throbbing faintly, but what was even stranger was that the heart in his chest was beating abnormally fast, as if something was tearing at his nerves, preventing him from calming down. He frowned, attributing this strangeness to the joy of seeing Vivian soon. As he pushed open the door and entered, Ruan Fu was standing in the middle of the living room, helplessly trying to persuade someone, while Vivian was facing away from him, her shoulders trembling slightly, her voice filled with anger. 10 billion. Dad, have you gone crazy? Ruan Fu lowered his voice. Where there's life, there's hope. Good daughter. Dad has no choice. I can't go back on my word to the Xie family. I have to choose one of my daughters to marry over there. I don't want you to wade into this muddy water, so I can only choose Lena. But that's the condition she agreed to. Think about it. Do you want to marry him or have these 10 billion? Vivian bit her lip slightly, and after a long while, reluctantly opened her mouth. Of course I don't want to marry him. He's a vegetable. Wouldn't marrying him be like being a widow while still alive? Besides, I've already caught the eye of the Wen family's young master. Halfway through her sentence, she caught sight of Evan's figure. Her face immediately changed, and when she turned around, she had already put on a sweet smile. Brother Yang Ci, you're here. Evan didn't hear their previous conversation clearly, only gently said, The doctor handed over the sugar-roasted chestnuts. Eat them while they're hot and soft. Jianwei took them, deliberately brushing his fingertips across Evan's palm, smiling with his eyes crinkled. They're still warm. Evan looked at her, the corners of his lips slightly raised. It's good that the second miss likes them. She should have been happy, but for some reason, the strange feeling in her heart grew stronger, as if something was quietly spiraling out of control. He paused and said, I've delivered it. I'll be leaving now. Vivian quickly grabbed his sleeve. You don't need to leave. Evan was stunned. What do you mean? Vivian blinked, feigning innocence. Didn't my sister tell you? She's already given you to me. Evan's mind went blank for a moment. What do you mean by given? Seeing that his expression was off, Vivian immediately added fuel to the fire, explaining, My sister has agreed to marry that vegetable from the Xie family for the sake of the 10 billion, and she moved out early this morning to go to Nan City. You'll be my bodyguard from now on. Evan's breathing suddenly became synchronized. Marriage. Marrying Xie Yunchuan, the once famous young master of the Xie family who was on par with him, and now a vegetable lying in a hospital bed. He suddenly remembered Lena's talk about moving this morning. It turned out that it wasn't just an ordinary move, but going to a difficult situation. The scene of meeting Lena for the first time uncontrollably emerged in her mind. 3 years ago, when the Ruan family was choosing bodyguards, he went because he admired the Ruan family's second daughter, Vivian, but he didn't expect that the one choosing the bodyguards was the eldest daughter, Lena. He wanted to leave directly, but was chosen at once. That day, the sun was very good. She walked down the spiral staircase in a red suspender dress. The sound of her high heels on the marble floor was as crisp as playing some kind of instrument. Let's go with him. She pointed at him, her red lips curving into a smile. He's good-looking. Later, he learned that this eldest lady was a well-known little enchantress in the circle, changing boyfriends more often than changing clothes, passionate and flamboyant. Like a fire that never burns out, he stayed behind inexplicably, telling himself that this way he could also get close to Vivian. After all, they were sisters. Later, she repeatedly flirted with her, but her way of flirting was clumsy and adorable, pretending to sprain her ankle and falling into her arms. She sprayed too much perfume, choking herself and making her sneeze. She knocked on her door in a sexy nightgown in the middle of the night, but perhaps because she was too nervous. Want to come in and sit for a while, became want to come in and sit, and she even pretended to drown in the pool. When he jumped in to save her, he realized that he couldn't swim at all and almost drowned himself. Evan's Adam's apple bobbed. Would someone as proud as him marry for 10 billion? Or marry a vegetable? Evan's heart suddenly twitched, as if pierced sharply by something. Seeing him distracted, Won Janwei tugged at his sleeve aggrievedly. Brother Yang Ci. Don't you want to stay by my side and protect me? Evan suddenly came back to his senses, suppressed the surging emotions in his heart, and said in a low voice, no. He heard himself say, it's my honor to be able to protect the second miss. But why was Lena all he could think about when he said that? The last look he gave her was calm and indifferent. As if he were looking at a stranger. That's great, Vivian cheered and affectionately took his arm. Then let's go shopping now. I want to buy a new dress. Evan mechanically followed her out. Isn't this what she always wanted? To be able to protect Vivian openly, without having to watch him from afar under the guise of being Lena's bodyguard. As for Lena, she had bullied Vivian since childhood, so it was good that she was gone now. At least no one would hurt Weiwei anymore. Evan's doting on Vivian was almost infuriating to both humans and gods. As a bodyguard, he accompanied Vivian shopping, eating, and watching movies. She casually mentioned wanting to eat the time-honored pastries from the west of the city, and he personally lined up to buy them at 3 a.m. When she was tired from shopping, he squatted down to massage her ankles, completely disregarding the surprised gazes of others, as the heir of the Wen family. Vivian liked a new collection from a certain haute couture jewelry brand, so he secretly sent someone to buy the entire collection and deliver it to her. He said he liked the stars, so he bought an entire constellation and named it after her. If she said she couldn't stand someone, that person would disappear from the circle the next day. All the brothers in the circle said that the Wen family's heir had fallen for the second young lady of the Wen family. This was true. That day Vivian insisted on taking her to the suburbs to watch the sunset. On the way back, a truck lost control and crashed straight into their car. In a split second, Evan jerked the steering wheel, diverting the impact away from the passenger seat, and then turned his body to protect Vivian. Bang! The car was hit and rolled over twice, the glass shattered, and the airbags deployed. Evan's back slammed heavily against the car door, and sharp metal fragments pierced his flesh, instantly soaking his shirt with blood, but his arms firmly protected the person in his arms, not allowing her to be hurt in the slightest. Brother Yang Ci. Vivian was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she trembled as she touched his face covered in blood. You're bleeding. Evan wanted to comfort her, but he coughed up blood as soon as he opened his mouth. Before he passed out, he only heard her collapsing cries. When he woke up again, all he saw was the pale ceiling of the hospital room. Vivian was dozing off by his bedside, and when she heard the movement, she immediately pounced on him and hugged him. You scared me to death. Why were you so silly? He accidentally pressed on his wound, and the sharp pain made Evan groan. But he still raised his hand to gently stroke her back. It's okay, it doesn't hurt, Vivian cried with tears streaming down her face. The doctor said that if the rebar had been inserted just an inch further, it would have hit my heart. He was still gentle. Don't cry, it's what I should do. You're too good to me. Vivian raised her tearful eyes slightly. You're clearly my sister's bodyguard, but you've always been secretly taking care of me all these years. I remember the time I had a fever. You braved the rain to run all over the city to buy me red bean cakes. That day, it was pouring rain. And you searched outside for 5 hours, returning completely soaked, but still delivering the warm red bean cakes to the Ruan residents. And last year on my birthday, I casually mentioned wanting a certain unreleased necklace, and you went to participate in a life or death race. What touched me the most was that flower on Wangyu Cliff, such a dangerous place. You risked your life to pick it for me. So, Vivian looked at him expectantly. Why are you so good to me? He opened his mouth, but the words I like you were stuck in his throat. It was too strange. He had clearly blocked a car for her, picked flowers for her, and even tattooed her name on his body. But when he really wanted to say it, his heart felt like it was being clenched by an invisible hand. hurting him so much that he couldn't breathe. "Are you free in 3 days?" He finally changed the subject. "I have something I want to tell you." Vivian's eyes lit up. "What is it?" "You'll know then." He forced a smile. Vivian wanted to ask more, but her phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his expression instantly became flustered. "Brother Yenzi, I have something to do. I have to go." Without waiting for Evan to respond, she grabbed her bag and rushed out of the ward. The moment the door closed, Evan's smile disappeared. He looked at the ceiling and suddenly recalled an accident half a year ago. At that time, he was still Lena's bodyguard and was attacked during a business event. To protect her, his shoulder was slashed with a deep wound that exposed the bone. "Evan, are you fucking crazy?" Lena exploded on the spot, her eyes red as she cursed at him. "Who told you to block it? Who told you to block it?" As she cursed, she frantically tried to stop the bleeding, completely unaware that her expensive dress was covered in blood. Later in the hospital, this young lady, who had never lifted a finger in her life, insisted on taking care of her personally. The porridge she cooked was so burnt it could be used as a brick, and she could peel off half a pound of fruit when peeling an apple, but she stubbornly refused to let the caregiver intervene. "You said my bodyguard was right," he said with red eyes at the time, "but my life is important, and so is yours." Recalling this, Evan's lips curled up unconsciously. The next second, she suddenly froze. What was he doing? Lena is already married. What's the point of Vivian thinking about these nonsense? As if to prove something, he grabbed his phone and dialed his childhood friend Jiyu Shiching. "Yo." Evan finally remembers his brother. A teasing voice came from the other end of the phone. "I heard you shielded your love from a car, almost dying heroically." Evan went straight to the point. "Help me prepare a confession scene." "What?" Jiyu Shiching almost fell off his chair. "You want to confess to Vivian? Finally not playing the secret admirer game anymore?" "Yeah." Evan rattled off a series of requests. A rose garden, a symphony orchestra, a drone show, and a pink diamond necklace. Jiyu Shiching clicked his tongue in amazement. "You're pulling out all the stops for a confession. Aren't you afraid you'll spoil her rotten in the future? I really don't understand what Vivian has that makes her worth so much to you." This question plunged Evan into memories. At a charity gala 3 years ago, he first met Vivian. She was wearing a white dress, unconcerned with her image. Climbing a tree to save a precarious bird's nest, sunlight dappled through the leaves, casting shadows on her, her face indistinct, yet as beautiful as a painting. He answered a phone call midway, and when he was about to return to help her, she had already successfully rescued the nest and left. He asked the intern who that was. The other person replied, "Miss Ron from the Ron family." It was that moment of infatuation that made him decide to approach her. To this end, he even concealed his identity to become Lena's bodyguard, just to see Vivian often. "She is kind and innocent." Evan mechanically listed Vivian's advantages, but the more he spoke, the more unfamiliar she seemed. In short, just be prepared. This time, I will definitely make Vivian say yes to me. After speaking, he hung up the phone directly. Evan's wound had not yet healed, and the doctor repeatedly urged him to rest, but he insisted on being discharged early. He spent hundreds of millions to set up a confession scene at the most luxurious Rose Manor in North City. The manor was covered with Juliette roses air-freighted from France, each of which he had personally selected. The songs played by the band were personally finalized by him after 3 sleepless nights. And the fireworks were customized into a starry sky pattern according to Vivian's preferences, which would bloom with his name at the most romantic moment. He even personally tasted all the meals, and was picky about the vintage of the champagne again and again. Xiao Jiyu Shiching couldn't help but tease him. "Evan, anyone who didn't know would think you were about to ascend the throne." Evan ignored him, just lowered his head to confirm that the time on his watch was half an hour away from the appointment. However, half an hour passed, and Vivian still did not appear. Evan stood on the rose-covered terrace, only to unconsciously rub the diamond ring in his pocket. He made countless calls to Vivian, but none were answered. Could something have happened? He frowned and immediately contacted his men to check Vivian's schedule for today. 10 minutes later, news came that Vivian was at the Rhine Beauty Salon. She had a full-body SPA and manicure today, and also made an appointment with a hairstylist. Having been there for 6 hours, Evan was stunned. Had he forgotten the time at the beauty salon? But yesterday he had clearly reminded him. He clenched his phone and drove directly to the Rhine Beauty Salon, a top VIP establishment. The security guard at the entrance saw him trying to break in and immediately stopped him. "Sir, please show your membership card. Get out of the way." The manager rushed over in a panic and slapped the security guard away. "Are you blind? This is Evan." Evan strode towards the top-floor private room with a cold face, but he heard laughter inside before pushing the door open. "Are you really not going to the appointment with that bodyguard?" his best friend's voice teased. Vivian chuckled lazily. "Why would I go? Just by looking at his eyes, you can tell he's going to confess." "How could I possibly marry a bodyguard? But he's so good to you," her best friend joked. "He shielded you from a car, picked flowers for you, and even tattooed your name on his chest. So what?" Vivian scoffed. "No matter how good he looks or how good he is to me, he's just a doorman. I'm someone who has caught the eye of the Wen family's young master now. Of course, I have to seize the opportunity to marry into a wealthy family." Evan's hand froze on the doorknob, her best friend asked. "Then why don't you just reject him? Stringing him along is so immoral." "What do you know?" Vivian's voice carried a hint of triumph. "He's handsome, a good fighter, and willing to risk his life for me. What's wrong with having another simp? Most importantly," she suddenly lowered her voice and smiled maliciously. "Lena likes him, but he likes me." Just imagining her expression of having her beloved thing snatched away makes me feel so good. It's like how she used to like wearing white dresses. "But after I said I liked them, Dad gave me all her white dresses, and I flaunted them in front of her every day, forcing her to never love white dresses again." Evan was thunderstruck. His best friend seemed interested and said, "Speaking of which, you've scammed Lena quite a bit over the years, haven't you? I heard her mother had a difficult childbirth. That woman deserved it." Vivian's tone suddenly sharpened. "Who told her mother to occupy Mrs. Wan's position and not let go?" "I just deliberately put some abortifacient in her water before she went into labor." "Who knew he was so useless that it directly led to 2 deaths with 1 corpse? Also, Lena's study abroad spot was cancelled because you reported her for academic fraud, just forging a report letter," Vivian said lightly. "That kind of idiot was framed by me, threw a big tantrum at home, but it was useless. Who told Dad to only favor me?" Every word was like a poisoned knife, stabbing the pure girl in Wen Yangxi's memory beyond recognition. The manager asked tremblingly, "Evan, are you going in?" The private room was suddenly silent for a moment, followed by Vivian's wary voice. "Who's out there?" Evan closed his eyes and turned to leave. "Don't tell him I was here." Inside the black Maybach, Evan smoked one cigarette after another. He recalled what Vivian had said earlier, that she despised him, the doorman, and only wanted to marry into a wealthy family. He gave Lena's 10-month pregnant mother an abortion pill, causing her and the baby to die. He reported Lena for academic fraud, causing her to lose her chance to study abroad. In the swirling smoke, he recalled Lena's eyes, always filled with mockery. She called him an idiot, her teeth gritted with sincerity. His trembling fingers as he bandaged her. The Evan he uttered before slamming the door, "I don't want you anymore." It turned out that the person she had cherished all these years was so unbearable, and Lena, who had been treated with cold indifference by him time and time again, was the real victim. The cigarette butt burned his fingertip, but he was completely unaware. In the distance, the fireworks at Rose Manor rose on time, exploding into a brilliant Vivian inscription. But the man who should have been looking up at the fireworks was just smoking one cigarette after another, his heart aching. He couldn't understand why the kind little girl from back then had turned into such a hideous figure. Boom! His fist slammed hard on the steering wheel, and he finally realized that he had been in love with an illusion all along. That girl with the bird's nest hair never existed, or rather, that person simply wasn't her. Vivian's memory suddenly flashed back to a banquet 3 years ago, sunshine, a girl in a white dress on a tree, and so on. The words Vivian said suddenly flashed back in his mind. It was like he used to like wearing white dresses, but after I said I liked them, Dad gave me all her white dresses. and I flaunted them in front of her every day, forcing him to never love white dresses again. At that time, he asked the intern who that girl was, and the intern only said she was Miss Won's family. Later, after he went abroad to work on company projects, he finally had time to find her trace, but learned that there were two girls in the Won family, one unrestrained and unruly, a little enchantress in the circle who loved to wear red dresses, and the other as pure as Muriel, who loved to wear white dresses. He subconsciously thought that Miss Won represented the second Miss Won, but now it seems that Evan's blood instantly froze. He trembled as he dialed Gu Shicheng's number, asking him to check the surveillance footage of the charity gala garden 3 years ago. He understood that it had been 3 years, and it would definitely take some time to find it, but as time ticked by, his heart pounded fiercely. He stared at the phone screen without blinking, so anxious that the ashtray was filled with cigarette butts. Suddenly, the phone vibrated, and he answered almost instantly, only to hear the respectful voice of the butler on the other end. "Young master, the old master wants you to return to the old residence immediately." Evan frowned. Grandpa wasn't feeling well. The old man didn't say it, but his tone was urgent. He hung up the phone and stepped on the gas. The Wen family's old house was brightly lit. As Evan stepped into the living room, a stack of photos flew towards him, scattering all over the floor. "Look at the kind of trash you've been chasing all these years." The old man, leaning on his cane, his face livid, the dignified air of the Wen family running off to be a bodyguard, just to earn a woman. Evan bent down to pick up the photos, his pupils suddenly constricting. In the photos, Vivian was wearing a sexy miniskirt, snuggling in the arms of different men, some wealthy men over 50, and some notorious playboys. The most glaring one was of her. "You thought she was a lotus flower, untouched by the mud." The old man sneered. "The Won family's little fortune can't even reach the threshold in the high society. This woman will use any means to climb the social ladder." Evan clenched the photos, his knuckles turning white. She suddenly remembered the words she had heard at the beauty salon today, thinking that was the limit, but she never thought he would give her another big surprise. "Grandpa, He was about to speak when the butler hurried in. "Young master, Miss Won from the Won family has sent a card, saying that tomorrow is your birthday and she wants to come and give you a gift in person." Evan retorted, "Tomorrow is her birthday." She originally planned to announce Vivian's identity to everyone at the birthday party after a successful confession, telling everyone that he had to be her. But now, the old man slammed the table and forbade her from coming. Evan suddenly spoke, his voice as cold as if it had been quenched in ice. "Please also invite President Won to come along." The butler was about to leave when Yancy stopped him again. "Go and check how Lena has been living in the Won family these years." The old man narrowed his eyes. "What idea are you hatching again?" "There are some things I need to confirm." Evan looked up, a dark tide surging in his eyes. "Grandpa, give me one more day, and I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer." The old man snorted and left with his cane, leaving a sentence behind. "Remember, the Wen family will never allow this kind of woman to enter." It was late at night. Evan stood in the study, looking at the thick stack of documents the butler had brought. The craft paper bag was light, yet it felt incredibly heavy. He took a deep breath and untied the cotton thread. Then, with each page he turned, his heart felt like it was being cut with a knife. The first page is Lena's case at 7 years old, stress-induced aphasia, lasting for 3 months, with the psychologist's handwriting attached. The patient witnessed her mother's death during a difficult childbirth and was severely traumatized. Her father brought his illegitimate daughter home that same day. The patient showed a strong resistance, the paper trembling slightly in her fingertips. Turning the page. It's the year Vivian transferred to the prestigious elementary school. Richard bought Vivian a custom-made backpack worth 100,000, while Lena carried an old, faded backpack her mother had bought before she died. At 12. Vivian's birthday banquet had 30 tables, and Lena was locked in the attic. At 15, Lena was admitted to a key high school, but her stepmother refused to pay the tuition, claiming that girls reading too many books was unnecessary. Her maternal grandfather secretly provided the money. At 18, Richard forcibly gave the overseas study opportunity that should have belonged to Lena to Vivian. The last page is Lena's diagnosis report from the year she turned 20, moderate depression. With self-harm tendencies, Evan slammed the file shut, his chest aching almost to the point of suffocation. He suddenly remembered Lena's hysterical appearance at the Ron family's birthday banquet. At the time, he dismissed it as unreasonable behavior, and even had her whipped 99 times in retaliation for Vivian taking a blow. Just before, he had been eager to get the surveillance footage, wanting to know who the person was that moved his heart, but now, he suddenly didn't dare to know the answer to that question. If the person in the bird's nest 3 years ago wasn't Vivian at all, if that person was Lena, if she was the girl he fell in love with at first sight, and what he had done to her, he didn't dare to think about it anymore. The crown prince of the Wen family's birthday banquet was so extravagant it was jaw-dropping. The entire manor was transformed into a medieval palace style, with crystal chandeliers refracting brilliant light. Servers carried champagne, weaving through the crowd, while a band played elegant classical music. Almost all the prominent figures in North City were present, eager to catch a glimpse of the rumored mysterious crown prince. Evan stood on the second-floor terrace, a cigarette between his fingers, his gaze fixed on the manor entrance. When Shin-chan appeared, travel-worn, at the side door of the banquet hall, Evan practically rushed down the stairs. "You better prepare yourself." Shin-chan hesitated as he handed over a tablet. The surveillance footage was somewhat blurry, but it clearly showed the garden scene from a charity gala 3 years prior. In the corner of the charity gala's garden, a girl in a white dress stood on tiptoe, carefully placing a precarious bird's nest back onto a tree branch. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, falling on her, clean as an elf who had strayed into the mortal world. Evan's breath hitched involuntarily. In the video's final minute, the girl finally turned around, sunlight gilding her with a golden edge. The wisps of hair on her forehead were wet with sweat, sticking to her fair cheeks. Unlike her current bright and flamboyant appearance, she was as pure as a clear spring then. Her face was bright and flamboyant, and a tear mole at the corner of her eye was unmistakably wan. The phone, heavy as fog, crashed to the ground. Evan stared intently at the screen, his heart feeling as if it were being clenched tightly by an invisible hand. He had been mistaken from the very beginning. On the other side, at the entrance of the manor, Vivian linked arms with Ron Fu, arriving gracefully amidst a throng of girlfriends. "Oh my God, the spectacle is too grand," a girlfriend exclaimed dramatically, "worthy of being the Wen family's crown prince, of course." Another close friend flattered, "Otherwise, why would he light the lanterns for Wei Wei at the auction, and why would he give such expensive gifts at her birthday party?" Vivian raised her chin triumphantly, enjoying the praise of the crowd, while Ron Fu was beaming, surrounded by a group of business tycoons flattering him. The Ron family was at most nouveau riche in North City. When had they ever received such treatment? He was smug and hinted in his words that you guessed it right. The Wen family's crown prince has indeed been particularly fond of Wei Wei recently. "Maybe there will be good news announced today." "When?" the crown prince said. The butler's loud voice echoed throughout the venue, and everyone's eyes turned to the spiral staircase. Evan descended slowly in a bespoke black suit, the well-tailored fabric accentuating his broad shoulders and narrow waist, the diamond pin at his collar refracting a cold light under the spotlights. His eyebrows and eyes were sharp, his jawline tight, exuding the unique air of superiority, each step seeming to tread on everyone's heartstrings. Vivian widened her eyes, exclaiming in disbelief, "Yang Ci, brother, it's you." Her girlfriends then realized and asked Yang Ci, the crown prince of the Wen family, "So, Vivian, your bodyguard is the crown prince himself?" Vivian's shock gradually turned to ecstatic joy. "So that's it, so the Evan who has always been by my side guarding me is the crown prince of the Wen family. No wonder he bid so high for her at the auction, no wonder he gave such expensive gifts." She trembled with excitement, as if she could already see her glorious future as the young mistress of the Wen family. Richard was overjoyed and quickly pulled his daughter forward to ask, "Young master, you're actually experiencing life by working as a bodyguard in our Wen family. Why didn't you let us know in advance?" It's all my fault for neglecting you in recent years, please don't blame me. Evan glanced at them coldly, raised his hand to signal the band to stop, and said, "Thank you all for coming." His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the entire audience. "Today, I'm taking advantage of this birthday banquet to announce something." Vivian's heart raced, and her cheeks flushed red. "As everyone knows, I've recently been particularly fond of the Ruan family's second young lady." Evan paused, a mocking curve appearing at the corner of his mouth. "The reason I've done this is to choose a wife for our family's second uncle." The whole place erupted in an uproar. Vivian's smile froze on her face, and she said in a trembling voice, "Second uncle, Evan, what are you talking about?" An elderly man with white hair, leaning on a cane, was helped out by the butler. He looked at Vivian with a smile and said, "This is my future wife." "Not bad, not bad," Evan said blandly. "This is my grandfather's cousin. He's been a widower for many years and has always wanted to remarry." Vivian staggered backward. "Impossible, Evan. This joke isn't funny at all." "Evan, you're joking, right? He could be my grandfather. Who allowed you to call the young master by his given name?" The bodyguard slapped her, and Vivian's face instantly swelled up on one side. The soft woman then realized what had happened and hurriedly stepped forward. "Evan, is there some misunderstanding? You were clearly interested in Weiwei." "CEO Ruan," Evan interrupted her, his voice as cold as ice. "My second uncle likes romance. As long as you agree to this marriage, the Wen family is willing to establish long-term cooperation with the Ruan family." Richard's expression changed instantly. Long-term cooperation with the Wen family would be enough of an opportunity for the Ruan family to become a first-tier family. "Dad," Vivian grabbed her father's arm in horror, "you won't agree, right? I'm only in my early 20s. Richard hesitated for a moment, then suddenly shook off his daughter's hand. "Being able to marry into the Wen family is your blessing." The soft man shook him off and looked at Evan with flattery. "Evan, don't worry, we'll get the marriage certificate today, and consummate the marriage tonight." Vivian looked at Richard in disbelief, her mind blank. No, this wasn't right, it shouldn't be like this. Crying, she threw herself at Wen Yang's porcelain inkstone. "Brother, you're joking with me, right? Aren't I your favorite? You were willing to give up your life for me." Evan stepped back, recoiling from his touch with disgust. "Like," she sneered, "the person I liked was that kind girl at the charity gala 3 years ago, not you." Vivian felt like she had been struck by lightning. "It means I mistook you for someone else, thinking I liked you, but actually the person I should have liked was your sister, Lena." Evan stopped looking at her and turned to the bodyguard. "What are you waiting for? Drag her away. Second uncle is waiting for the wedding night." No, I don't want to," Vivian screamed hysterically as if struck by lightning, but Evan didn't even bother to glance at her, signaling the bodyguard to drag her away directly. The banquet continued, and amidst the clinking of glasses, Richard tried to start a conversation several times, but Evan coldly avoided him. It wasn't until the end of the event that Richard finally caught the opportunity and stopped Evan, who was preparing to leave. "Mr. Richard, the matter of cooperation is easy to discuss." Evan pointed to the black Maybach in the parking lot, about 10 meters away from where Richard was standing, and said, "Wait for me there." Richard, suspecting nothing, happily ran over and stood there. The roar of the engine echoed throughout the parking lot, and Evan slammed on the gas pedal. The Maybach rushing towards Richard like an arrow. Richard was thrown several meters, landing heavily on the concrete ground, and blood instantly stained the ground red. "Instruct the doctor." Evan lowered the car window and said casually to the approaching bodyguard, "Beat him to death." The black sports car sped along the winding mountain road, reaching speeds of 200 kilometers per hour. Evan's hands gripping the steering wheel were tense with bulging veins. And it wasn't until after an hour of driving that he gradually calmed down. "Lily," he murmured, "I've finally avenged you." He dialed his assistant's number and arranged for a private plane to go to Nanchang immediately. The assistant stammered, "Evan, I'm afraid it's too late." "What do you mean?" "Today is Lena's wedding day with young Master Xie." Evan slammed on the brakes. "Wedding? What wedding? Isn't Xie Yunchuan a vegetable?" "That's what I was about to report to you." The assistant's voice trembled. young Master Xie suddenly woke up the first day Miss Wan arrived in Nan City Hilton Hotel. Lena sat in the bridal dressing room, looking at her elaborately dressed self in the mirror, still feeling dazed. She thought she would marry a vegetable and spend the rest of her life as a widow, but fate played a joke on her. On her first day at the Xie family, Xie Yunchuan woke up. At that time, she was just standing by the bed, looking down at the man who had been sleeping for many years. Her features were deep, and her eyelashes cast a shadow on her pale face, as quiet as a painting. She sighed, thinking that if he wasn't sleeping here, he would probably be an incredibly stunning man. But the next second, Xie Yunchuan's fingers suddenly moved. She was so frightened that she took a step back and watched as he slowly opened his eyes, his dark eyes looking straight at her. In the moment their eyes met, she panicked and her voice trembled. Doctor, he's awake." What happened afterwards was like fast-forwarding. The Xie family was overjoyed and wept, and the doctors swarmed in to perform examinations, while she just stood blankly in the corner, watching the man who should have been asleep gradually regain consciousness. The Xie family was in chaos, with doctors, servants, and Xie family elders all pouring in. After confirming that Xie Yunchuan had really woken up, Madame Xie knelt down on the spot, took her hand, and burst into tears. "You are the lucky star of our Xie family." Later, Xie Yunchuan said he wanted to see her. She walked into the ward, thinking he wanted to talk about calling off the engagement. After all, the Wan family had always been beneath the Xie family. She had never understood why the Xie family had agreed to the marriage in the first place. Now that she was awake, there was even less reason to go through with it. But before she could speak, she heard him say, "Miss Wen, do you know why the Xie family agreed to this marriage?" She shook her head. "It wasn't an agreement with the Wan family." Xie Yunchuan's voice was soft, but every word was clear. "It was an agreement with Liang Jiahui, the Liang family, your mother's family. Your mother and my mother were best friends." He watched her slightly trembling eyelashes. They had agreed that if they had children in the future, they would become family through marriage. Lena's throat tightened. "Later, your mother passed away, and you didn't have a good life in the Wan family." Xie Yunchuan slowly sat up. "The Liang family had always wanted to take you back, but the Wan family wouldn't let you go. It wasn't until President Wan proposed a marriage alliance that the Liang family took the opportunity to get you out of the Wan family. So, Miss Wan, whether I am awake or still asleep, I will not marry your sister. I will only marry you. I have slept for too long and need to readjust to the business world." Xie Yunchuan suddenly smiled. "But I guarantee that I am quite capable and will protect you for the rest of your life. The Xie family as well, from now on. You can spend as much money as you want and do whatever you want." He paused, his voice gentle. "Although we have no feelings for each other, we can start with marriage first and slowly develop love. Would you be willing to try?" At that moment, Lena nodded as if possessed. With a click, the door to the dressing room was pushed open, interrupting his memories. Wan Wuli came back to his senses and found Xie Yunchuan standing behind him at some point. The man was wearing a well-tailored black suit, and his broad shoulders and narrow waist perfectly complemented the formal attire. He lowered his head and placed a kiss on the back of his neck, his warm breath spraying against his skin, causing a shiver. "So shy," he chuckled. "What are we going to do tonight?" "Who's shy?" His ears were red. "I just didn't react." "Okay, I'm a seasoned veteran." "Okay." "Oh." Xie Yunchuan raised his eyebrows, his tone intimate, as if they had been in love for many years. "Then aren't we amazing?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. "What about the agreed-upon marriage first, love later? Why does this man seem so deeply in love? Why are you here? Isn't the ceremony not starting yet?" He tried to change the subject. "I was afraid you'd be nervous." Xie Yunchuan took his hand, interlacing their fingers. "So we won't enter separately. I'll walk in with you, holding your hand." His palm was warm and dry, inexplicably reassuring. Standing outside the banquet hall waiting, Lena suddenly felt a little dazed. He had fantasized about his wedding countless times, wearing a pure white wedding dress, walking towards Evan with his father's arm in his. A fine, prickling pain came from his heart, and he took a deep breath, erasing that name from his mind completely. "Ready?" Xie Yunchuan asked softly. Lena nodded, returning a smile. The wedding march rang out, and the door slowly opened, with hundreds of eyes turning to look. Softly, he subconsciously clenched Xie Yunchuan's hand. "Don't be afraid," he whispered in his ear. "I'm here." The guests on both sides of the red carpet whispered among themselves. "A perfect match. Mrs. Xie is so beautiful. I heard she's the one who woke up President Xie. The Xie family has married a lucky star." From the first day she arrived in Nan City, the Xie family's attitude towards him was unusually friendly, with no contempt, no difficulty, and not even a single word of gossip. And now, all the guests the Xie family invited were praising him, and not a single person mentioned the Ruan family. It must have been specially arranged by Xie Yunchuan. A warm current surged in his heart. During the ring exchange, the MC asked with a smile, "Mr. Xie Yunchuan, do you take Ms. Lena to be your wife, for richer or poorer?" "I do," Xie Yunchuan answered without hesitation. "Ms. Lena, do you?" She didn't. The banquet hall door was suddenly smashed open, and a slender figure stood against the light. Ron Muley's body stiffened, and he slowly turned his head. Evan stood at the door, his suit disheveled, and the broken hair on his forehead soaked with sweat. His chest rose and fell violently, as if he had run all the way here. "Lily," his voice was hoarse and unrecognizable, "don't marry him." The guests' seats instantly erupted. "Isn't that the heir of the Wen family?" "What did he just say? Don't marry him? He's trying to hijack the wedding." Heavens, the Xie family's young master just woke up, and there's this drama at the wedding. Whispers came like a tide. Lena clenched her palm tightly, almost thinking she was dreaming. How could Evan be here? She watched him walk towards her step by step. His suit was disheveled, and his eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't rested well in a long time. "Don't marry him," he repeated, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. Lena's fingertips trembled slightly as she forced herself to calm down. "Evan, what are you doing here?" He could even hear the coldness in his own voice. "Aren't you afraid your beloved Vivian will be jealous?" Evan's breathing was unsteady, and a strong look of pain surged in his eyes. "I mistook you for someone else." Her voice was low and hoarse, as if suppressing countless emotions. "Lily, 3 years ago, the person I liked was you, not Vivian. I've been blind and foolish these years, loving the wrong person. Do you still remember the time you climbed a tree to save a nest of birds at the charity gala 3 years ago? I fell in love with you at first sight that day, but I mistakenly thought it was Vivian." Lena, her pupils contracted slightly. Of course. He remembered that day when she climbed a tree in a white dress to save a precarious bird's nest. When she came down, she saw a man standing behind the tree in the distance. He thought he was just passing by and left in a hurry. It turned out to be him. Evan saw that he was stunned, thinking that he didn't believe him, and continued eagerly. "I have already found out that Vivian has been lying to me all these years, saying that you, not him, made her life difficult in the Ruan family. He poisoned your mother, causing her and your unborn sibling to die, and bullied you since you were a child, forging a letter of denunciation to make you lose your opportunity to study abroad. I'm sorry, I didn't investigate clearly. I made you suffer." Every word he said made his weak heart twitch painfully. Those past grievances and pains were laid out so lightly by him, as if a simple "didn't investigate clearly" mistook the person could offset all his pain over the years. He suddenly smiled, but his eyes were icy cold. "So, your one sentence of mistook the person, didn't investigate clearly can offset all the grievances I've suffered over the years." Evan's Adam's apple bobbed, his voice low, almost pleading. "Lily, I'm sorry. I will spend my whole life making it up to you." Making it up? He gave a sarcastic tug at the corners of his lips. "Evan, do you remember how you treated me for Vivian?" Evan's body stiffened, his words like knives twisting into his heart. "At the auction, you went all out for him, making it impossible for me to get a single item. You risked your life to pick a flower for him. You whispered his name in your heart, only caring about protecting him, causing me to be mauled by Tibetan mastiffs, and even took revenge on me for him." With each sentence he spoke, Evan's face grew paler. By the end, he could barely stand, and could only clench his fists tightly, his nails digging deep into his palms. "I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse, and his eyes were red. he begged. Please give me one more chance. He spoke rapidly. As if afraid of being interrupted, I have already avenged everyone who bullied you, Vivian and your father. I have taken care of them all. Vivian married my 60-year-old second uncle, and your father's leg was broken by me. Lena looked shocked, and before she could speak, Xie Yunchuan had already blocked him with a cold face. Enough, President Wen. Please have some self-respect. Evan's pained expression was instantly replaced by a sharp glint. He forced himself to calm down and look at Xie Yunchuan. Young Master Xie has just woken up. How much affection can he have for Lily? Why put on this act? As long as you are willing to let go, I will give you 30% of the profits from all of Wen's projects. The audience was in an uproar. The cooperative projects between Xie's and Wen's were all worth tens of billions in profit, and Evan was actually willing to give them all up. Lena's heart was shaken. She knew that Xie Yunchuan was essentially a businessman, and no one would refuse this deal. But the next second, Xie Yunchuan sneered, "No need." Meanwhile, the Xie family members stood up one after another, and Madame Xie even walked directly to Lena's side, holding her hand. Lily is our Xie family's daughter-in-law, not a commodity. Lena's eyes warmed, and a warm current surged through her heart. Evan looked at them in disbelief, finally turning to Ron Muley again, pleading almost desperately, "Lily, please come with me." "Okay, I will spend my life making it up to you." Lena closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, only determination remained in her eyes. "No, I won't." She turned to the priest. "Please continue the wedding." The pain in Evan's eyes was instantly replaced by madness. "Who dares?" he shouted sternly. The assistant quickly stepped forward and whispered, "President Wen, everything is ready outside." Lena's heart skipped a beat, and she looked sharply at Evan. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Evan's eyes were bloodshot, his voice low and harsh. "I've planted bombs all around outside. If you don't agree to come with me, everyone in here dies with you." The entire venue fell silent instantly. Ron Mu felt a chill run down his spine. "You're insane." "I am insane." He stared at him, saying each word with emphasis. "If you marry someone else, I might go completely mad." "Evan," his voice trembled. "What exactly do you want? Come with me." He stared intently at him. "Give me one chance. If you're not willing, then let's all die together." Lena was nearly driven mad, her fingertips digging deeply into her palm. Just then, Xie Yunchuan grasped his hand, his voice calm and firm. "Then let's die together." The Xie family members said in unison, "We stand together." The guests, however, panicked and knelt down, begging, "Miss Wan, please agree to him. This is, after all, your own affair. Don't involve us." "Yes, Miss Wan, we're just attending a wedding banquet. How innocent we are." Lena bit her lip hard, finally taking a deep breath. "Fine." He looked at Evan, his voice icy. "I'll give you only 1 week. From now on, you are not allowed to go crazy again." Evan's eyes instantly lit up with ecstatic joy. "Okay." Xie Yunchuan squeezed his hand tightly. "Lily." Lena looked at him and said softly, "Do you trust me? I'll just go for 1 week, okay?" Xie Yunchuan remained silent for a long time, ultimately choosing to respect him, and released his hand. Madame Xie handed him a small package and whispered, "Lily, there are important things inside. Look at it when you have time." Lena nodded and followed Evan away. Evan couldn't wait to take him on the private plane. Lena said coldly, "If you dare take me away from Nan City, I will die here right now. You can just blow everyone up." Evan had to back down. Okay, we won't leave." "You like Nan City? Then we'll stay here." He made a phone call and had someone prepare the most expensive mansion in Nan City. When Lena walked into the villa, he froze on the spot. The villa's layout was exactly the same as his home before his mother passed away. Evan hugged him from behind and whispered, "Do you like it?" Lena sneered. "I remember you used to coax Vivian like this, didn't you? You lit sky lanterns for her, tattooed for her, and even because she took a whip for you, you ordered someone to whip me 99 times. Evan's heart ached fiercely, and he hugged him tighter. "Lily, I will make it up to you." Lena was unwilling to believe his words. "Make it up? Those injuries have already been engraved into my bones. How can you make up for them?" He turned around and went into the room. slamming the door shut until when Yang Yang kindly knocked on the door to call him for dinner before he came out, he paused slightly as he opened the door. Evan was wearing an apron, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing his well-defined forearms. Several dishes were laid out on the dining table, all appealing to the eye, nose, and palate, and all his favorites. "Did you make this?" He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah," he said softly, not wanting to be disturbed. Lena sneered. For the cooking skills Vivian learned, Evan's fingers stiffened, and a look of pain flashed in his eyes. "Lily, can you please stop mentioning him?" But he insisted on bringing him up. At the dinner table, he kept taunting him, one sentence after another. "Vivian loves sweets the most. Did you often make them for him before, when you fed it and ran to the cliff to pick flowers? Did you ever think you might lose your life, when he saw you calling his name affectionately? Was he so moved that he cried?" Every sentence twisted into Evan's heart like a knife. He went from initial pain to later silence, and finally just listened numbly, without even the strength to refute. But Lena felt pleased, until after dinner, he got up to go back to his room. But Evan suddenly stopped him. Li Yili handed him a whip, the soft object held upright. "What do you mean, 99 sides?" His voice was low and hoarse. "I'm returning it to you." He stared at him and sneered. "You think this can make up for it? It's not making up." He raised his eyes, a dark abyss in their depths. "It's what I owe you." He took a document from his pocket and handed it to him. "I've already written my will. Even if you beat me to death, the Wen family won't trouble you. All the Wen family's property is left to you." Lena's fingertips trembled slightly. Then she sneered. "You think I'm a little girl, to be coaxed by your sweet words?" Evan looked at her, his voice so soft it was almost inaudible. "I'm telling the truth." Before he finished speaking, she lashed a whip fiercely across his back. Evan grunted, his back stiffening, but he forcibly suppressed any sound. Lena showed no mercy. The sound of the second whip cutting through the air was especially piercing in the silent apartment, the sound of flesh tearing open accompanied by the spreading smell of blood. Evan remained standing, his back straight, not even flinching. By the time the 99th whip fell, his back was a bloody mess, and blood dripped from the corners of his clothes onto the floor, a shocking sight. He finally staggered, but still managed to stand firm. Reaching out to grab Lena's hand softly, coldly watching him through a haze, she asked, "What? Regretting it and want to hit me back?" Evan shook his head, gently rubbing her wrist with his fingertips, his voice weak. "Does your hand hurt?" Lena was stunned, then he abruptly pulled his hand back. Sneering, "Evan, are you that pathetic?" He tugged at the corners of his mouth, forcing a pale smile. "As long as you're happy, you can say whatever you want." His tenderness was unbearable, and she turned weakly to leave, only to be called back by him again. "One more thing," he said, handing her a knife. She frowned. "What do you want to do now?" Evan raised his hand and tore open his shirt, already soaked with blood, revealing the glaring tattoo on his chest, and bent slightly towards her, his voice hoarse. Lena sneered. "What? Don't want to keep his name now?" Before the words could fade, Evan suddenly grabbed his hand and plunged the knife into his own heart. Thud. Blood spurted out instantly. He went limp, his pupils contracted, and he subconsciously tried to pull his hand away. But Evan held it tightly. "Don't move." His forehead veins bulged with pain, but he still struggled to hold his hand, bending the flesh inch by inch. Blood flowed down his chest, staining his trouser legs and his soft hands red. Mist trembled at his fingertips. His breathing almost stopped, but Evan seemed not to feel the pain, bending the flesh completely, and then, holding his hand, carved new names into his heart, one knife at a time. Li Yili. When the last knife fell, he could no longer stand, but he still struggled to look at him, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Li Yili." His voice was as light as a sigh. "I love you." After saying that, he completely fainted, falling heavily to the ground, blood spreading beneath him like a blooming cluster amaryllis. Lena stood there, the knife in her hand clattering to the ground. He looked at the blood all over the floor and suddenly realized that the cruelest revenge in the world was not hate, but that he was willing to bend his heart and cut his bones for him. But he dared not believe it anymore. Evan had a dream. In the back garden of that charity gala, The sun was just right. He didn't go to make that call, but stood under the tree, watching the girl in the white dress carefully put the bird's nest back into the treetop. She jumped down lightly, patted the dust off her skirt, and looked up to meet his gaze. He stepped forward, his voice deep and gentle. "Hello. My name is Evan, and I'd like to get to know you." The girl blinked, raising her chin anxiously. "Oh, why? Because you're beautiful," she chuckled. She snorted. But the tips of her ears turned red secretly. "Since you like me so much, I'll reluctantly give you a chance to know this young lady." He suppressed a laugh, finding him unbelievably adorable. The story in his dream unfolded naturally. He pursued him, and he reluctantly agreed with a hint of pride. During their relationship, he spoiled her immensely, and she snuggled in his arms, acting spoiled and playful. Eventually, they walked down the aisle, exchanging rings amidst blessings from everyone. He leaned down to kiss him, and he blushed, whispering, "When Yentsi, you must treat me well for the rest of your life." He smiled and promised a lifetime. Mr. When the doctor's call forcefully pulled him from his dream, Evan suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze met by a snow-white ceiling. The sharp pain in his back and chest reminded him that reality held no wedding, no love, only devastation and hurt. "Where is Miss Wan?" he asked hoarsely. "In the garden," the doctor replied. Evan, disregarding the objections, forced himself out of bed and staggered towards the garden. Sunlight streamed through the flowers. Lena stood there, lightly caressing a rose with her fingertips, her profile breathtakingly beautiful in the light. He was just about to step forward when he heard her giggle into her phone. "Yeah, I miss you too." Evan felt his blood instantly freeze. Her tone carried a hint of shyness and playfulness, a softness he had never heard before. "Husband," she whispered. The word stabbed into Evan's heart like a knife. He rushed forward, grabbing her wrist. "What are you doing?" Lena was startled but quickly regained her composure, raising an eyebrow. "What's it to you if she's on the phone with her husband?" "Don't call her husband," he rasped, his eyes bloodshot. "I insist on calling her that," Lena sneered. Every time she called out husband, 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 Evan's face paled a little more. By the end, his eyes were red, and his voice trembled. "Lily, don't treat me like this." Lena was stunned. She had never seen Evan like this before. So humble, so tormented. As if she had personally shattered him. "All my pride is retribution, isn't it?" He tugged at the corner of his mouth, his smile more painful than tears. "You can kill me. Just don't treat me like this." Limp, his throat tightened, but before he could speak, Evan had already composed himself and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry I didn't stay with you last night." He paused, took his hand, and said, "I have a surprise for you today." As night fell, Evan took Lena to an outdoor grandstand, thinking it was some kind of performance, until the host's passionate voice rang out, "Tonight's special program, Mr. Evan versus the Tibetan Mastiff." Lena stood up abruptly. "You're crazy." But Evan just smiled gently. "The injuries you suffered back then, I will repay you 100-fold. The iron cage opened, and the massive Tibetan Mastiff charged out, roaring. Evan met it with his bare hands and was instantly knocked to the ground. Evan was weak and cried out in a cracked voice. The Tibetan Mastiff's sharp teeth tore into his arm, and blood spurted out. Evan grunted, however, and punched the Tibetan Mastiff in the eye with his backhand. There was a gasp in the arena as the fight became intensely suffocating. Each lunge from the Tibetan Mastiff carried a deadly threat. But Evan, covered in blood, never retreated. Finally, he strangled the Tibetan Mastiff's throat with his bare hands, and in the horrified gazes of everyone, he strangled it to death. The whole place was silent. Evan staggered to his feet, his body a bloody mess, but he still walked step by step to the weak Lena, then knelt down in front of him with a smile. As if submitting, "I was bitten by 10 pieces of flesh." He looked up at him, his voice hoarse. "I'll repay it tenfold. Lily, can you forgive me now?" Lena's fingertips trembled. "You're really crazy." Evan smiled. He took his hand and pressed it to his blood-stained face, his eyes obsessive and gentle. "I am crazy. I've been crazy for a long time. Lily, only you can cure me." For the next 3 days, Evan used almost all the romance he had in his entire life. On the first day, he took her to the tallest Ferris wheel in the North City. He had heard that couples who kiss at the top would be together forever. He stood in front of the cabin door, his eyes filled with cautious anticipation. Lena sneered, "Then we should kiss at the lowest point, so we'll never see each other again in the next life." The light in Evan's eyes dimmed, but he still forced a smile. "It's okay, I just wanted to show you the night view, as the Ferris wheel reached its highest point." The lights of the entire city came into view. Evan suddenly knelt on one knee, took a diamond ring from his pocket. "Lee," his voice was slightly hoarse, "if we could do it over again." "There are no ifs," she interrupted him and turned to look out the window. The next day, he personally prepared a Manchu-Han imperial feast. "I remember you like spicy food." He placed a piece of boiled fish into his bowl, his eyes gentle. "Try it." Wonwoo glanced at Vivian. "She doesn't eat spicy food." "So you never made these before, right?" Evan's hand froze in midair, and he dumped all the food into the trash in front of him. On the third day, he took her to the beach. As night fell, drones formed his smiling face in the night sky. Fireworks exploded, spelling out "Lily, I love you. Do you like it?" he asked softly. Lena looked at the dazzling sky and suddenly smiled. "Evan, did you used to pursue Vivian like this?" He clenched his fists suddenly, his throat tightening. "No, only you." His voice was so low it was almost inaudible. "All of this is only for you." Lena remained unmoved. Back in her room, Lena realized that tomorrow was the last day, so she went back to her room to pack. Casually, she opened the bag that Xie's mother had given her. Inside was a manila envelope with yellowed edges. As if it had been rubbed repeatedly, hesitantly, she opened a stack of letters that slipped out, each beginning with "To Lily, first. I saw you for the first time at the Liang family's banquet today. You were wearing a white dress, standing in the garden feeding cats. Even though it was so lively around you, it was as if you were alone in a quiet world. I stood on the second floor and watched you for a long time, until you noticed me and smiled at me. At that moment, I knew I was done for." Yun Chuan's second letter. Lee, I heard that Ruan's illegitimate daughter troubled you again. I asked the butler to send you medicine in the name of the Xie family. I don't know if you used it. Actually, I want to see you in person, but I can't find a suitable reason. Yun Chuan's third letter. Lee, today is your 18th birthday, and also the anniversary of your mother's death. I flew to Beijing and waited outside the cemetery all day, watching you sitting alone in front of the tombstone crying. I bought your favorite blueberry cake and put it at the door, hoping you can taste it. Yun Chuan. The last letter. Lee, your father came to propose marriage, hoping that the Xie family and the Ruan family will get engaged. I know he wants to marry the second daughter over. This is a trap, but I still agreed, because this is the only way to marry you. If you see this letter, it means we are already married. Please don't be afraid of this marriage. I didn't marry you out of pity. From the first time I saw you at the age of 16, I have been waiting for this day. Yun Chuan's letter fell from Linashand. He remembered the way Xie Yun Chuan looked at him after waking up, that restrained and deep gaze. It wasn't the politeness of a stranger, but a love buried for many years. On the morning of the fourth day, he stood in the living room, looking at him calmly. "The 7 days are up. I'm leaving." Evan Shand paused while making coffee. "I did say I'd let you go." He turned around, his eyes dark. "But the premise is that you have to make a choice. Are you going to Xie Yun Chuan's side, or staying with me?" Lena sneered. "I choose to go." Before the words finished, Evan suddenly took out a revolver and pressed it against his temple. "Two choices." His voice was terrifyingly calm. "Are you staying or leaving? This gun has 4 bullets. 3 blanks, and 1 live round." He cocked the trigger. "And I'll fire a shot every time you say a word." This means that he will not die only when he says he will stay, but if he says he wants to leave, he will definitely die. Lena's pupils shrank suddenly. "You're crazy, threatening me with your life." He chuckled softly. "I'm just betting on whether you care about me at all." He stared intently at the violent rise and fall of her chest. Evan gritted his teeth. "Don't force me. Hate me then. So be it." His eyes were both stubborn and gentle. "At least it's better than forgetting me." After a long silence, Lena took a deep breath. "I fired the first shot. A blank." Evan didn't even blink. "Ready to go." Boom. The second shot was still a blank, cold sweat had already broken out on his forehead. But he was still smiling as he watched Lena continue. Her fingertips were trembling, but her voice was terrifyingly calm. She fired the third shot, a blank. She opened the fourth shot, bang. Blood instantly gushed from Evan's chest. He staggered back a few steps and fell heavily to the ground, but he was still smiling at Lee Yealy. His mouth was full of blood, and his voice was as light as a sigh. "You are so cruel." Lena stood there, her nails digging deep into her palm. She watched his blood spread across the floor, watched his pupils gradually dilate, watched the medical staff rush in and carry him away, never once looking back. A month later, Xie Yunchuan of Nancheng held a grand wedding for her, a pure white wedding dress, vibrant roses, and blessings from everyone. The priest asked Ms. Lena, "Are you willing to marry Mr. Xie Yunchuan, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer?" She looked at the gentleman before her and whispered, "I do." As they exchanged rings, Xie Yunchuan suddenly asked in a low voice about his recent condition, which wasn't good. Lena's fingertips trembled. The doctor said the bullet was only 1 centimeter away from his heart, and it was a miracle he survived. Xie Yunchuan gazed at him, but he might never wake up. Lena was silent for a long time, then finally smiled. Not mentioning him anymore, he stood on tiptoe and kissed the corner of Xie Yunchuan's lips. "For the rest of our lives, Mr. Xie, please guide me," Xie Yunchuan gently replied. "Mrs. Xie, please guide me." Late at night after the wedding, Wan Wuli stood alone on the balcony. The moonlight shining on the diamond ring on his ring finger, sparkling. He suddenly remembered the bodyguard who always followed him with a cold face a long time ago, remembered him taking the knife for him, remembered the warmth of him carrying him home in the rainy night, remembered the look in his eyes when he finally said, "Lily, I will love you with my life," and also remembered his very new look as he fell in a pool of blood and smiled. The night wind dissipated the poetic feeling in the corner of his eyes, and he whispered, "Evan, goodbye and never see you again." Alright, that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We'll keep updating with more exciting stories, and we look forward to seeing you next time.